Hello everyone, welcome to Walk the Parks. My name is Blake. Today we're going to do the full hike on the Upper Calf Creek Trail down to Upper Calf Creek Falls and back. This trail is absolutely amazing and it's also quite remote. The trailhead isn't very well marked. You kind of have to take a random dirt road off the side of the road, so I would suggest looking at a map is probably your best way to be able to find this. At the end of this video, I did kind of drive around the parking area of the trailhead, and you can see, and I also drive out to Highway 12, and you can kind of see what it looks like. So hopefully that'll help. But go ahead and try to use another reference to find the exact trailhead. So now that we're here, we're pulling up to the trailhead sign. I will read this aloud in its entirety in just a few minutes. But first, we're just going to go over a couple things. Number one, why would you watch this video? Well, maybe I think there's a few reasons. First, maybe you're considering going to this area, trying to figure out what hikes are right for you, or maybe you have already read like a description and you want to see what it's really like. I hope that these videos kind of take off where guidebooks and websites and apps kind of stop, right? Because you can have pictures, you can have reviews, you can have trail descriptions, but this is actually trying to show you what the trail is like and what to expect. Obviously, nothing replaces the real thing, but I think this gets a little bit closer than the other resources that are available. Second, there's probably a lot of people in the world that will never make it here for whatever reason. So this is for you. So if you're never going to come to this area, that's fine. But this can give you kind of a more in-depth understanding of what this trail is like, and not in an abbreviated form. You can kind of hopefully have a better immersive experience. Lastly, I think a great idea for these videos is just for in the background, like maybe you're on the gym at a treadmill and you can just throw this on and feel like most gyms have like the news or something on. Not that there's anything wrong with the news necessarily, but you can watch this instead. And again, feel free to mute me. A lot of times I'll put on these videos on mute just on one monitor and kind of do some work on the other monitor. So there's just 3 ideas for watching this video. Here we go on the hike. So this hike is quite strenuous. Even though you can't tell, steepness is one of the hardest things to show on a video. This is pretty steep. Like I'm going kind of slow. It's not too slippery, to be honest. Like I think if it were wet, it wouldn't be very much fun. Um, but it's pretty steep, and you kind of just go down. You kind of can make your own switchbacks. That would be my kind of recommended strategy. You can kind of just go to the left and the right on your own. Also, a lot of times, if you follow like the cracks in the rocks on slick rock, sometimes the cracks will like just because they're kind of uneven surfaces can kind of give you a little bit more traction. Um, but it's pretty steep. Honestly, this trail is quite steep. You kind of like, is this the trail? One thing to be aware of around this whole huge area, this is all part of a geological area called the Colorado Plateau, and it's not really in Colorado because obviously we're kind of near Boulder, Utah here. Um, but the Colorado Plateau is the huge area. I kind of like to describe it as like the area that looks like Mars. It's kind of got all these crazy rocks, red rocks, all this slick rock. It's desert, very unique area. But that's all the Colorado Plateau, and that's a ton of southern Utah. It's very western Colorado, and then some of the northwestern part of New Mexico, and then lastly in Arizona down to like the Grand Canyon. So that would all be described as the Colorado Plateau, and this is here. So I kind of look back to kind of try to give a perspective. So we've already lost a lot of elevation gain, and as tends to be the case for canyon hikes, like especially like this one where you start at the top, just be careful because obviously you have to go all the way back up this. A lot of times canyons, the easiest part is at the beginning because you're going down. And I know a lot of you might be like, oh, my knees hurt more on the way down or whatever. But, it can be quite a challenge just cardiovascularly to get back up. So keep that in mind. If you do go here, you're going to have it's not super long, but it is a challenging hike and steep hike to get back up. So keep that in mind. And then while we're on that topic, just be really careful. As you can see, there are a few trees here, but there's not a ton of trees, which means there's not a lot of shade. So if you're here in the summer, it can be extremely hot and hikes can kind of get dangerous. I know a lot of times you might initially think like, "Oh, I can't wait to get out in the heat and the sun. It's going to be so awesome." But that's not really the case in the desert. I mean, the sun is kind of relentless. It just kind of beats down on you and you don't have any way to like get out of it and go into some shade. So because of that, it can be challenging. So just make sure to have tons of electrolytes, replace that salt in your body because you end up losing a lot of salt and you can kind of lose it without noticing it if you're not used to this type of terrain. The desert is so dry that a lot of times you might not become soaking wet from sweat. It might just evaporate very quickly, and so you might not even kind of notice that you're losing all that, and then you can kind of quickly succumb to heat injuries, which are not very much fun. So, what does that mean? When should you come here? I would highly recommend coming here either in spring or fall. Wintertime, even though we are in the desert and the general kind of stereotype for the desert is that it is very hot, it is also very cold. It can be extremely cold in the winter. You can even have some snow and ice, during storms and things like that. And this trail probably would not be fun at all if there was snow on ice on it, to be honest, because it's so steep and we're still going down here, even though it's a little bit tricky to tell. All right, so now but in spring and fall, you get good weather. Summer's kind of too hot, winter's kind of too cold. But spring and fall, also kind of be prepared for anything. And I know that freaks people out, but I think that just means wear layers, right? So, you have like a base layer. I'd recommend like a long sleeve polyester wicking shirt, some sort of mid layer, perhaps like, some sort of lightweight fleece works quite well. There's a whole bunch of different mid layers you could have. Fleece is a cheap option that works extremely well. And then maybe have like a rain jacket on top of that. That would be a good thing to bring here. And then as it gets colder, maybe also add like a puffy jacket, or if you're going to take a lot of time. Something else to note is that I do tend to be a faster hiker than most people. Some people might be laughing at this and being like, my record for doing this trail is like 20 minutes, and I'm taking like an hour to do it. So that's true, but a lot of people do end up taking breaks. I try to edit out all the breaks here because, um, I don't want you to make these videos already so long as it is watching me hike this. Um, so keep that in mind. I've cut all those out, so it might take you longer than an hour, especially depending on what your style is. To be honest, if it was a warmer day, or you could probably, um, soak a little bit, soak your feet in the creek. That might feel really good. And this hike is awesome, by the way. The I feel like my pictures of the waterfall didn't really do it justice. It wasn't flowing like super strong and kind of a bit tricky to take photos of, or I just couldn't figure out how to do it the best. But this hike is amazing, so I'd highly recommend it. It's super adventurous too, even though there is the steep part at the beginning that we're about to end, and at the end, it's a really adventurous hike. I like that you're kind of just going down this wall of slick rock. There's a lot of trails right near, like between Boulder and Escalante, that are just amazing. And actually, let me just say, like in general, this area is absolutely incredible. Grand Staircase, Escalante. I mean, I know there's 5 national parks in Utah, but this whole area could honestly be a national park. If you're a more adventurous person, there is just unlimited possibilities. Especially like this area is amazing between like Boulder and Escalante. There's this one trail called the Boulder Mail Route, which is so cool. You drop way down into this kind of this canyon, and there's like water at the bottom that you go through. There's all sorts of cool slick rock, and there's so many adventures that you could go on. The downside is there's not tons of trails and it's a little bit more off the beaten path. Like a lot of national parks have quite a few of well-maintained trails. I mean, to be honest, if you're adventurous, there's a lot of different stuff you can get into depending on regulations, your skill and comfort level, and kind of what's allowed within the park or area. Um, but there's so many adventures around here. Like you could just kind of walk and go in like any direction and find so many cool things. But of course, the thing you want to be careful of is one, do you have the skill to do that, right? Like it can also be kind of easy to get lost. So, if you're just going randomly places, also you don't really want to trample vegetation. There's this stuff called cryptobiotic soil around this whole area. It's kind of this surface and these organisms grow. It really kind of looks like dirt, and it like almost like textured dirt with a little bit of a darker color on it. Like it looks like it's difficult to describe, but kind of textured dirt. But if you step on it, it can take so like a super, super, super long time for it to regrow. So you certainly want to be careful if you do go on anything off trail. Really, the three best surfaces to stay on are going to be designated trails. That's by far the best, and then slick rock, like we're about to be on right now. Right, so if you just stay on this very slick rock that doesn't have vegetation, you're not causing much damage to anything. And then lastly, like washes. So a wash is a stream with no water in the desert. So pretty easy to tell you're kind of in a stream bed. Usually they only fill up during flash floods, but that's a good place to walk as well. So as you can see, the trail is marked by cairns. This trail can be a little bit confusing. There's also a big intersection that we're going to come to. Not quite yet, it's in a few minutes, but it's like you can either go down to the waterfall, which I really like. That's where I go in this video. But if you continue to go straight, which could be easy to do, you kind of get a higher view of the waterfall. I personally think it's cool to go down to the waterfall itself. It's absolutely beautiful down there. But if you're looking, I mean, you could do both, obviously. Or if you're just looking for a kind of view from a little bit higher, then you can stay to the right. And as you can see, the trail isn't super well defined here. Um, it's not bad. Like you can see, there's kind of a row of rocks along the right here, kind of trying to get you to point to the left and turn to the left. But make sure that when you're in these areas that you're really kind of paying attention to these things. Like some hikes, like this one might not be the best very first hike to do, just because it is a little bit more off the beaten path. And if you've never been to this area of the country, it might be a little bit tricky. But that said, it also is full of adventure. And if you are used to this area, then go for it. All right, so next up, I'm just going to read the full sign that's at the trailhead. Um, so we are in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and it says Upper Calf Creek. You are about to descend into a wilderness frontier, a place that demands dependence on self. Sculpted by wind, water, and time, these canyons safeguard opportunities for solitude and personal discovery amidst a landscape of scientific wonder. Know before you go. Maximum group size 12. Free permits required for overnight use. Commercial trips and organized groups must possess a special recreation permit. Campfires not permitted in Escalante, Paria, or Hackberry Canyons, or in alcoves, rock shelters, or archaeological sites. Graffiti on any rock surface offends, vandalizes, and is illegal. Cairns are occasionally used by park rangers to help hikers navigate in order to protect soil crust. Do not stack rocks. And again, a cairn is a stack of rocks. A lot of people might think like, "Oh, I should make some more or I should knock some down." Just leave everything how it is, I think is the best way to deal with that because if you build one in the wrong spot, you can like get people to go in the wrong area, trample vegetation, just get lost in general. That's not good. And if you knock things down, you might not even realize it because you're just on a different route. But it's definitely possible that, um, there is these routes that go into canyons. There's all sorts of different canyoneering things. Maybe a cairn is marking that. So just kind of your best bet is just kind of to leave them alone. And let's see, rock images and ancient dwellings, pot shards, or any artifacts are important traces of the past. Removal or desecration is illegal. Never camp in alcoves or cultural sites. And then if you witness a cultural theft or vandalism, you can call the crime hotline 1-800-227-7286. And a minimum $250 reward is offered for information um, leading to the arrest and conviction of any person violating cultural resource laws. That's really interesting to me. I'd never really seen a reward offered for that. That's really interesting. All right, so motorized vehicles and bicycles must stay on open designated roads. Off-road travel is prohibited. Lower and upper Calf Creek Falls are closed to rappelling for public health and safety and to protect sensitive species. Keep the stories in place. Collection of rocks, bones, or fossils is illegal. And it says livestock are permitted to graze in many backcountry areas. When trapped, give livestock a wide berth. Avoid pushing them down slope. Report trapped or dead livestock to the nearest visitor center. Pets must be on a leash no longer than 6 feet within Calf Creek Recreation Area and kept under control to avoid disturbing wildlife and hikers. And no discharge of firearms is allowed within Calf Creek Recreation Area. Then there's a section called said keep it wild. There are no toilets on this trail. Carry and use portable waste bags. In their absence, bury human waste in holes 6 to 8 inches below ground and at least 30 feet, or excuse me, at least 300 feet from water sources. Never use an alcove for a toilet. Pack out toilet paper, food, scraps, and all trash. And then, just like I was talking about, avoid black, bumpy soil crust and lichens. Rock hop if you must travel through soil crust. These ancient crusts are the foundation of life in the desert. All right, and then we have a couple more things here. Um, just for it says you are responsible for your own safety. There are two easy ways to die in the desert: thirst and drowning. Heat is a common, and that's a quote by Craig Childs. Heat is a common killer. Carry and drink 4 liters of water, or 1 gallon of water per person per day. Flash floods occur without warning. Thunderstorms may occur many miles upstream of your location while you can see clear blue skies. Pay attention to weather. When in doubt, stay out of slot canyons. Know where you are going and how to get back. This is a remote area with no defined routes, and cell phones may not have signal. Climbing to nearby high point may help. And that says an emergency, try 911 or call Garfield County Sheriff at 435 676 2678. So there is the trailhead sign. But like I said, like so, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure place. This whole area, in my mind, could be a national park. It's absolutely beautiful, and as you kind of gain the skill and the desire for more adventure, it's just it's just limitless. You can do some amazing like day hikes, backpacking trips. Again, you just have to be really careful. Just remember the main rules of canyoneering, which is never go down something you can't go back up, and never go up something you can't go back down. Now, that sounds pretty obvious, but sometimes you'd be surprised. You can climb up some incredibly steep, slick rock. A lot of it has incredibly good traction, and you can get up, but then you turn around and you might be like, oh my God, I do not want to go down. And then, same thing, you don't want to kind of slide down and maybe jump off a little tiny ledge to get to the next level, and then you're looking back up on it and it's way too steep to climb. So kind of keep that in mind. I feel like this trail is so cool. You've got like you're kind of traversing along the side. You have that big steep part initially, and now we're about to go to the bottom of the canyon and check out the beautiful waterfall, which is amazing. I was also here. There was only like 2 or 3 cars at the trailhead, and I only saw 3 or 4 people, I think, on this whole route, which is fantastic. Now, one thing to also keep in mind, I probably should have mentioned this earlier in the video, and that is that Lower Calf Creek Falls is definitely the more popular area. There's a campground at it. There's a much larger parking lot and stuff like this. I would say, hmm, maybe Lower Calf Creek Falls. They're both incredibly beautiful, to be honest. Both have their strengths. Um, Maybe I think it's accessibility. Like it's not quite as steep. Okay, so here's the point where I'm saying you can either turn left and go down or go straight. So that's a good point to mark right there. If you were to go straight, you would lead to like a view above the waterfall, looking down on it. But like I said, now we're going down into the canyon and getting all the way down to the base of the waterfall. I personally think this was the better option, but you do you. If you this does get a little bit steep, you're kind of sidestepping again. Nothing too crazy, but just keep in mind that there's a little bit more kind of scrambling going down here. But I think it's cool to go to the base of the waterfall. So, just some general information about this hike. It's approximately 2.1 miles out and back. Um, it is definitely challenging. One source I said it takes about an hour and 15 minutes to complete. So one time I actually went on a really long trip. I made up my own route, and I started hiking at Yellowstone, at Old Faithful, and I hiked all the way to the Grand Canyon. And I connected every national park along the way. So I connected every national park in Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, into Nevada, and then down into Arizona to the Grand Canyon. It was really cool. And I went right through, right near this area. I didn't take this trail, but I do remember I went into Boulder. First, I was kind of way above, like I was in Boulder Mountain after going through Capitol Reef, and it was really cold. And I was like, maybe I should take a little bit of a lower route. So I walked into the town of Boulder, and then I walked out and walked to Escalante via the Boulder Escalante Mail Trail, which was supposedly mail was carried on back in the day, which is just the craziest, coolest mail route I've ever even considered. But it's just fantastic. This whole area, I've been lucky enough to explore it quite in depth. Like I've done a ton of day hikes and quite a few backpacking trips in the area as well, just in the greater area. And honestly, every trip has been fantastic. Not without its challenges, though. Sometimes water can be a challenge. Like this is nice that we're going to a waterfall, um, but water has been a challenge on some of these hikes, like where there's just no water sources. I actually ended up caching a little bit of water on that trip that I was just describing because it was really late in fall and it was like a really bad drought year. So because it's so late in fall, a lot of the campgrounds had their water turned off, so I couldn't rely on that. And then the just due to the drought, it was really hard. Slash, there was no information whether creeks were running, and most of them weren't. So because of that, I cached a bunch of water. All right, so right here we're getting quite close. We're kind of in this alcove here. Really cool place to hang out down here. This would probably be the area that you want to hang out in because right here, I mean, there you can see the waterfall. Look how beautiful that is. Absolutely gorgeous. But the reason you want to hang out here is like as you're about to see, first off, it gets a little bit overgrown in this area, at least when I was there. And then it was kind of like not muddy, but the ground was pretty wet actually, like that I go down to here. So because of that, not exactly the area I want to hang out. All right, and then not sure what I'm doing here. Oh, I was kind of looking around. I was like, where do I go? But that's exactly what I was thinking while I was hiking too. So down there is not where the trail goes. This is the trail I'm trying to kind of, burrow through here. And as you can kind of see, it looks a little bit muddy, but it's kind of, and you can tell here, it is kind of muddy. So I kind of tried to tread as lightly as I could, and then also try to get some photos. I tried to find a little bit of a drier area. I think at one point I do put down my backpack, but yeah, look at this. So in my mind, this is about as good as it gets for like a hike that's a little over 2 miles round trip. There's the day I went anyway. There really wasn't people here. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's just stunning. And this is what I'm looking for, trying to get that good shot. Sadly, that one at the beginning of the video is what I thought was the best shot, but I don't know if it really was. So again, a little bit of a challenging hike. You kind of have that steep part at the beginning and at the end here to get down to the waterfall. It's kind of a little muddy down here. The trail isn't the best marked, but it's just awesome. So here I am putting my mid-layer away because I know the hike up is going to be quite a bit hotter for me. And so now I'm just going to go over a bunch of things. First off, I don't know if it's useful to everybody that I have it both ways. I made a decision a while ago. I remember one of my first videos I put up, someone commented like, "Oh, going down is harder," and I didn't even record it. So I was like, well, all right, I'll do to and from for most of my videos, and hopefully it's useful. Like maybe if people, um, I don't know, maybe it helps people navigate in some crazy experiences. Absolutely beautiful spot here. Cool place to hang out for a little bit. And like I said, I was pretty amazed that there was really not many people around at all. So pretty cool. So this hike is known for its relatively short distance but steep terrain. The trail starts with a descent over slick rock marked by cairns, where you'll need to use good stamina for some rock scrambling. This stuff I'm reading here, I got from Grok, which is like the AI that's within Twitter now. So trying to use that just to have some different things to talk about. I couldn't find a ton of official information on online or anything like that, which in a lot of ways is pretty cool. I mean, there are, of course, it's on like all trails and all that, but I just don't want to just read that directly. So the round trip is about 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers, making it a short but vigorous hike due to its steep nature. The trail involves a descent to the falls and a climb back up, which is considered the toughest part of the hike. And I guess I can agree with that. You're kind of like all aspects of it are a little bit challenging. Like here, I'm kind of going through a tunnel that's a bit overgrown. Then you kind of go, it requires a little bit of navigation too. I kind of walked by it the first time, not realizing that was where to go. And then you are doing a bit of, a bit of sidestepping and stuff like that. And like as you're traversing. So this whole hike is awesome, adventurous, but you do need to be careful. So the falls themselves, Upper Calf Creek Falls, is 88 feet tall, which is 27 meters. The plunge. There is a smaller but deep plunge pool just above the main falls, which some visitors use for swimming. So that's interesting. I didn't go check that out. Upon reaching a split in the trail, hikers can choose to go left to descend to the base of the falls, which we did, or go right, which is kind of more straight as you're going down, but to view the falls from above, or continue to the smaller upper pool. The views from the trail are dramatic, offering sights of far-reaching landscapes and the winding Calf Creek Canyon. Flora and cautions. Around the falls, especially at the lower trail to the left, beware of poison ivy. The area around the creek has willows, water birch, and silver buffalo berry. Experience. Despite being less popular than its lower counterpart, Upper Calf Creek Falls offers a serene spot with less crowds. The base of the falls provides a nice area to relax with a grassy spot and large rock slabs. And as I mentioned, um, the trailhead can be found along a dirt road, and it says it's between miles markers 80 and 81 on Utah Highway 12. And this road is rough and rocky. I wouldn't say when I was there it was too bad. It was certainly narrow and a little bit unexpected. Like I said, there's not really a trail to it, which offers kind of a cool aspect to the adventure. So here we're looking for cairn, see those little rock piles, and we're going up here. And like I said, this part, it's not terrible, but it is a little bit like you're kind of sidestepping and it's a little bit steep. So you always want to kind of be careful. And always, I would always just recommend, no matter how short a hike you're going on, bring a little bit of water, bring a couple snacks. Maybe you want to hang out at a place a lot longer than you expected. And if you bring water and snacks, you can do that. And it's not a problem at all. You definitely want to have good hiking shoes with grip, just do because the sections are steep. Doesn't mean you have to wear necessarily the most hardcore boots, but just make sure to have something at least like running shoes with good traction on them is the key. Some big lugs or something like that is good. This whole, area could be affected by thunderstorms. A lot of times, like, in this type of terrain, you are quite exposed, right? Like, there's not a ton of trees around and things like that. So it can be a little bit scary in thunderstorms. And let's see here. Remember, while the hike is short, its steepness requires a moderate level of fitness, especially for the climb back to the trailhead. Enjoy the beautiful scenery, but always be prepared for the natural elements and the physical challenge this trail presents. So, for the little bit more of the hike, let's learn a little bit about the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, or GSENM. It's a vast and rugged area located in the southern Utah, United States, known for its stunning geological features, extensive wilderness, and significant archaeological heritage. There is an overview based on general knowledge. Oh, here's an overview based on general knowledge and public sentiment. So, as far as a geographical and geological overview, um, as far as sizing designation, it was initially designated in 1996 by President Bill Clinton, and the monument spans nearly 1.87 million acres. That's huge. It was established to protect an extraordinary landscape of geological, paleontological, biological, and archaeological value. And the monument is divided into three main regions, and that would be the Grand Staircase, the Kaiparowitz Plateau, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, I apologize if I'm not, and the canyons of Escalante. Each offers unique geological formations. And the Grand Staircase, this region offers an immense sequence of sedimentary rock layers that stretch from Bryce Canyon down through Zion and into the Grand Canyon. These layers showcase nearly 200 million years of Earth's geological history. And just a quick comment about Highway 12. It's absolutely incredible. So it kind of starts or ends right near Capitol Reef National Park, and then the other side starts or ends near Bryce Canyon National Park, and then pretty close to Zion as well. And it is just fantastic. There are so many cool things off Highway 12. It's a beautiful drive. There's tons of like little side adventures. And as I've mentioned several times, it's also like a lot more opportunity for adventure. I'm not going to spoil everything here. I know maybe some people are watching just thinking like, oh, please, he didn't do his research. I've actually been lucky enough to do a ton of adventures in this area. But I don't want to just say everything, I mean, I have a ton of videos and stuff like that. But that's kind of the cool part, right? Like some of this requires a little bit more research. So you can watch some more of my videos. You can just kind of do some research on the internet. I just don't want also people to go places and get too far over their heads because a lot of the stuff in the National Monument is absolutely incredible, but as I've kind of alluded to, can also require a bit more navigation and a bit more skill. So, this hike isn't too bad. I think a lot of people, when if you'll kind of know you're in over your head if you are at the top of it and you look down, like this video doesn't do it very well justice. But you're kind of like, oh gosh, this is where the trail goes, and it's quite steep. So I think, and then just think like, oh god, I got to go back up that too. So I think that'll filter some people out. But you do certainly want to be careful here. You're effectively in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I guess you're not too many miles from the town of Boulder, but Boulder is not a very large town. I think there's like, one. I mean, I don't even know. Maybe trying to think if there's one place to get gas, maybe two, and then there is that Hell's Backbone restaurant, which is really popular. There's like an expensive, fancy, cool restaurant. Um, I think it's called the Hell's Backbone Grill, and you can go there. Hell's Backbone is like this on this road, and it's a super narrow part that the road goes over. Really beautiful. I have driven up there once in a rental car when I was caching water for myself, and it was pretty cool. I was happy that I got to experience the actual Devil's Backbone. Cool area to drive. I would not bring a two-wheel drive car if I were to do it again. I did not beat up the rental car too bad, but I also was like, oh man, I think I am, a little bit over the I think it was like a Toyota Corolla or something. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't do it again in a Toyota Corolla. So there are some other famous hiking trails in Slot Canyons, Peekaboo and Spooky Gulch, which I will release videos of soon, and the Escalante River canyons. The Lower Calf Creek Falls is also really popular. So we're at Upper Calf Creek Falls, but Lower Calf Creek is definitely the more popular one. And there's also a ton of other things, that just requires, some knowledge, a little bit more reading, a little bit of research, and, a sense of adventure. But there's a whole bunch of awesome stuff out here. As far as camping, there are developed and primitive camping options available. Um, providing opportunities for visitors to immerse themselves into the wilderness. So this is definitely an awesome place for like van life or RV life. Just be careful. You don't want to necessarily take your go on down a road that might be too challenging or over your head. So do a little bit more research on that. As far as cultural and historical significance, Native American history, the region was home to the Fremont and ancestral Puebloan cultures. Evidence of their presence includes rock art, granaries, and occupation sites. And exploration. The first recorded Anglo exploration was by Jacob Hamblin in 1871, with significant geological mapping done by Clarence Dutton, who conceptualized the Grand Staircase. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, 1871 isn't that long ago. And recent developments and public sentiment, kind of conservation versus development. As with a lot of places like this, there's an ongoing debate and local tension regarding land use, conservation, road maintenance rights, and the balance between tourism and preservation, right? Because you want to have, of course, you want people to be able to experience this wonderful area, but you also don't want people to love it to death. Like there's some argument that like if places are made a national park, it automatically makes so many more people go to them, which kind of takes away some aspects of what you're trying to protect. So I think that's the same thing, it's just a national monument. So in this area, it does seem to get more and more popular. However, I must say it's extremely impressive, like how undeveloped the area still is. Like I've been coming here for a few years, and like Boulder, Utah, for example, the town that's near here is like not very developed. Sure, there's that restaurant, but I think the restaurant's been there a really long time. There's not like big hotels going in, and I'm not sure how it's done. If it's how it's done, if it's just made by a small group of people, if their local government they have like a whole bunch of unity and they're just like let's not develop things because it's kind of surprising. People definitely come to this area. You would think a lot of people would want to attract tourists, and because of the potential money it could bring in and to kind of like allow people to access it. But at the same time, it's really cool that there is these kind of conservation efforts, and it's still kept pretty small, and there's lots of good hiking, and I can come to a place like this, during really kind of peak season. I think, it's here in the springtime and not see too many people on the trail. I mean, four or five, something like that, maybe we've seen so far, which really isn't much. Pretty cool. So also recreation fee changes. There have been mentions of updates regarding recreation fee structure for certain areas within or near the monument, indicating modern management efforts for conservation and visitor services. This is kind of happening everywhere. A lot of places and campgrounds are going over to like recreation.gov, and you have to book reservations there. Um, and it is kind of tricky. Like some places, like you have to reserve in advance, and um, this actually brings up something that means a lot to me personally that I've just because I've experienced it. Like, so there's a lot of campgrounds, like I just was mentioning, that you do have to book through recreation.gov, and that's fine. But some campgrounds, especially during peak season, can be pretty hard to book. Like, there's not much availability. But then let's say I am able to get a night somewhere, right? I refresh the site and I get a site. But then I go there and walk around, and granted, a lot of these campgrounds are in the middle of nowhere. People might arrive at awkward times in the middle of the night because they didn't anticipate, hike taking too long or a drive taking too long or whatever. But but even so, like so, a lot of these places have a lot of empty sites, and it's really disappointing because the campground is quote unquote sold out. But then you arrive and there's really like a lot of empty sites. Sure, it's reserved. Um, so it's really challenging because in a lot of instances, maybe people keep the reservation because they're like, oh, whatever, it's only 20, $30. So, and in some instances, even canceling, you don't get any refund and things like that. So it's like, why bother canceling? Even if there is a small refund or a partial refund, sometimes people keep it because they're like, well, we never know. We might change my mind, and, we might change our mind on our trip and decide to go there anyway. Um, but it's kind of disappointing because then, you get there and there's empty sites. Like, and I understand the value of booking things in advance and being prepared, but I also value spontaneity. It's not just like like, oh, you came unprepared and unplanned. It's cool to be able to go somewhere and just kind of figure it out rather than have and have a little bit more adventure rather than have every detail of your itinerary planned. So I don't know. Maybe the strategy would be to have like $100 deposit or something like that, and you receive that deposit back when you arrive to the campground. I mean, there'd be arguments against that because it's expensive and to have to put $100 deposit is pretty crazy. That's a pretty large amount of money, or maybe a penalty, like if you don't show up. Um, but at the same time, you don't want to encourage people to drive, exhausted to get somewhere. So I haven't thought of the absolute best solution yet, but I just know the problem is a little bit frustrating because it's like, other people that are coming and being told that the campground is sold out, but there are actually vacant sites, right? So anyway, just something to keep in mind. So now we're kind of just plugging our way back up, and it's steeper than it looks. I remember being kind of tired this day too. So I'm just kind of trudging up here through the uh through the heat. Also, oh my gosh, I went to Yellowstone and the Tetons recently. Absolutely beautiful place. But there's not too much dispersed camping. I mean, I'm sure people are, if anybody's watching this, then maybe you have your secret spot or whatnot. But the campgrounds that exist it's getting expensive. Like it's like some places it's like $50, $60 for a campsite. Um, and so I mean I understand it is a high demand area and things like that, but that's getting pretty expensive for a campsite. It's kind of crazy. So anyway, just throw it in 2 cents there. And then scientific research, the monument continues to be a significant area for geological, paleontological, and archaeological research. However, there's mention of large scale excavations being deferred to future generations, suggesting changes in research or preservation strategies. Also, public access and damage. Recent sentiments express concerns over the condition of some sites, with mention of damaged steps and trails being built or modified for better access or preservation. I watched something not too long ago, and they were talking about how, even though, you might be somewhere by yourself, like me on this trail, like if I were to kind of walk off trail or like litter or something like that, like which is do not recommend at all. Like, we want to leave no trace, leave only footprints, take only pictures. But if I'm like, well, it's just me, I'll just litter a little bit, and then or like, oh, I'll just like use the restroom improperly or something like that. And a lot of people have that mentality, but the reality is because there's so many individuals that might go do that and repeat the same thing, it can really end up causing a ton of damage, like in an area that seems like this trail seems like just no one's on here. So anyway, kind of an obvious concept, but also one that kind of made me think and realize like, oh, that's true. I should try to be on my best behavior at these places because lots and lots of people have been here before me. Lots and lots and lots of people hopefully will be able to go here after me. So let's keep it as nice as we possibly can so everyone, has fantastic outcomes. So, in conclusion, the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument remains a jewel of natural beauty and scientific interest, offering solitude, adventure, and a deep dive into Earth's history. However, it's also a place of ongoing management challenges, balancing accessibility, preservation, and the impact of visitors on its delicate ecosystems and structures. Public sentiment reflects a mix of awe, concern for conservation, and some frustration over access and management decisions. And I can understand that too. I mean, where I currently live, there's a beautiful wilderness area that I've explored a ton. And just a couple years ago, they implemented a pretty strict permit system. Like the permits are in high demand. It used to be you could just walk up, you could literally walk in and at the trailhead just sign up for whatever you wanted, which was fantastic. I would go like all the time. But now you're limited. Like not only are the permits like competitive, so you might not even get what you want, but you're limited to two per year. So that's a bit a bit challenging, like just because I live so close to it and it's meant so much to me to be able to go there and spend the night. It's kind of frustrating now that there's such a strong permit system. So I can understand, but I also understand that like you don't want to love things to death. We do want people to go to places forever. So these are the debates. And let's see here. The ancestral Puebloans is the group of people who, lived in this area. They're often known as the Anasazi in older literature. And they're the ancestors of the contemporary Pueblo people and are notably notable for their distinctive architecture and sophisticated culture. And here's an overview. So they thrive from approximately 1200 BCE to 1540 BCE, with peak periods of development around 750 to 1300 CE, which really isn't that um, long ago. And their culture was centered in the Four Corners region of the United States, which includes parts of modern day Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. As far as architecture, they have cliff dwellings. Perhaps the most famous structures, are the cliff dwellings like those found at Mesa Verde. If you guys have never gone there, very cool. There's all sorts of just amazingly well preserved dwellings. And those were built into the sides of cliffs using sandstone, mortar, and wooden beams. And there's also pueblo structures. They constructed pueblos, which are multi-story house complexes made from adobe, stone, and other local materials. Example include Chaco Canyon's Pueblo Bonito. I went there and it was actually really cool. And there's also kivas, which are circular subterranean structures used for religious ceremonies, political meetings, and social gatherings. So, as you can see, we're still kind of climbing here. I was kind of struggling this day, but it's just kind of up, 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 up. Um, so, a few more minutes of climbing. We'll be back at the vehicle, and then we'll all go about our day. So let's talk about the culture and society of the ancestral Puebloans. They were big into agriculture, great farmers, growing maize, beans, and squash. They developed sophisticated irrigation systems to manage water in an arid environment. And they're also known for their black on white pottery. And they also have other styles of pottery like corrugated ware, um, which were not only utilitarian but also artistic expressions. And if you can see this or like Google it, it's super cool. Some very cool pottery came out of this region. And there was also an extensive trade network that included items like turquoise, shells, and even parrots from Mesoamerica. That's pretty cool. As far as religion and astronomy, their spiritual life was deeply connected to the land and the sky. Many structures aligned with solar and lunar events, suggesting advanced understanding of astronomy. And, I feel like sometimes it's easy to be like, how do they know so much about astronomy? But then you also think, like, man, we have smartphones, the internet, all sorts of books and things at our fingertips, whereas they really didn't. But gosh, they probably spent a ton of time looking up at the sky, and at the sun and paying attention to stuff like that because that's what's right around them, right? And they probably knew all about different, plants, which ones are edible, which ones you can use to make things, and things like that. So I always think about that. It's kind of funny, like we sometimes think, oh, we're so advanced or whatnot, but the reality is that it just kind of shifts, right? Like these guys were really like, I don't know how to. Most people I know don't know how to weave a basket from or make rope from like a plant in the desert, let alone survive there, let alone look up at the sky and learn to align your structures with specific astrological events and things like that. But we do have, but these guys probably didn't know how to use an iPad or use the internet or to watch a YouTube video. So it's interesting. Like in a lot of ways, sure. I mean, our life expectancy has increased and our technology has increased, but at the same time, we've lost a lot of things too, like the ability, to it'd be pretty cool to make a rope. But we might think in modern era, like, oh, that's just silly because you can just buy a rope and there's a rope making factory and we've made all these cool machines that can make rope stronger and easier than ever. Anyway, just something interesting that I think about. And they also believe in Kachinas, the Kachina spirits, which are central to the Pueblo religion even today, representing various aspects of life, nature, and ancestral spirits. So that's pretty cool. And as far as what happened to them, there were some This is what's believed. There are some environmental challenges. Around the late 13th century, they faced severe droughts, which combined with possible social, political, or resource depletion issues led to the abandonment of major sites like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon, and also, but basically they didn't disappear. They kind of migrated into other areas. Modern Pueblo tribes in New Mexico and Arizona, like the Hopi, Zuni, and the Rio Grande Pueblo peoples, are their descendants. And many aspects of ancestral Puebloan culture, including architecture, agricultural techniques, spiritual practices, continue in contemporary Pueblo cultures. And former homes are now significant archaeological sites, national parks, and World Heritage sites, which preserves their history and offers insights into their way of life. And I wondered this because it's like for forever the people of this area were commonly referred to as the Anasazi, whereas now they're ancestral Puebloans. But the term Anasazi actually means ancient enemies or enemy ancestors in Navajo. So that's why they kind of changed it to ancestral Puebloans. So that's pretty interesting. So one more thing to think about. Just remember to leave no trace. I kind of mentioned this before, but this trail is absolutely amazing, as you've witnessed. I hope you're able to go there one day on your own and check it out. It's really fantastic. This shows how steep it is a little bit better. It's really quite steep. So, like I said, if the telltale, I think, will be when people arrive, they'll look down and be like, "Oh God, do I want to go down that?" Not that it's that crazy, but it's fairly steep. And then it's like, not only do I want to go down that, but also do I want to huff and puff back up it. So keep that in mind. Not the longest downhill in the world. It's super beautiful. Obviously, it leads to a beautiful place, but at the same time, you know, you might not want to do it if you're not up for the adventure and the fitness level. So because it's such a beautiful area and nothing is here, I just ask, try to leave no trace, right? So just try to travel on durable surfaces. No need to be trampling plants or anything like that. You want to dispose of waste properly. There's no garbage cans anywhere here. Whatever you pack in, pack it in, pack it out, and leave what you find. If you do find some cool pottery shards or something like that, it's cool. Maybe take a look at them, examine them, but don't take them. Leave it for the next person to see. That's so cool. If you just take a little one and everybody else does, then nobody will ever find them again. So that's unfortunate. All right, we're almost to the top. We're almost back to the rim. I can just feel myself huffing and puffing here. And something else I'm doing right here is I'm kind of just making my own switchbacks. I kind of mentioned that on the way down, but you can also do it on the way up. If you kind of make switchbacks, your own switchbacks as you go up and down, it makes the hill a little bit easier. They say like once the slope of a hill, so like the steepness of a hill gets to a certain level, that distance doesn't matter. And what that means is like if you just hike straight up the hill, like it's gonna be like hard and you'll be huffing and puffing. But because it's that steep, if you do just a bunch of switchbacks, which are just zigzags going across, even though those zigzags are gonna require, a ton more distance, like just being measured, it'll actually be just as easy, if not easier. So something to consider. All right, and here we are back at the top. Victory is ours. Thank you so much for joining me on the hike. I will stay with you just a couple more minutes because I am going to just walk you through I did drive a little bit just so we can take a look at what to expect for the parking lot and stuff like that. And my apologies, I didn't film it all the way from Boulder to so that you can see exactly where the trailhead is, but all the major maps will be able to show you, or guidebooks, or you can check it out on the internet. Look at whatever your favorite trail app is. So as you can see, so people were able to bring in some trailers and stuff like that. So can give you an idea. The road actually wasn't too bad. All right, so then this is just me leaving, and I just wanted to show you. So there is a sign here. It says Upper Calf Creek Falls Trailhead on the left there. And then I just wanted to show you, like, there's not too much parking. Like, maybe somebody get into the right there, like parallel parking. These big vehicles, like, you might be able to park a little bit, over here. I think it's all about strategic parking too. You got to kind of remember, especially even if you come here, like, and you have a big vehicle, try to maybe back in or just be strategic, because who knows how many people might show up. Or just be polite to your fellow trail user. Also, consider if you're going to block somebody in. One time I went on a winter trip in Colorado, and man, why on earth would you park behind someone and like block somebody in? Like, I barely got out. Like, I was like a half inch from a huge rock that would like destroy my, and even that I think was not like intentional. They weren't like, oh, he can get out. But anyway, be respectful to your fellow backcountry users. And thank you guys so much for joining me today. What a beautiful day. Normally this place is known for having like bluebird skies and not very cloudy. My whole trip was pretty cloudy, actually. So this is what it looks like. You can see it's pretty nondescript. So keep that in mind. We'll drive a little bit on Highway 12 just to show you. I love Highway 12 too, because there's all these like random dirt roads with no signs really, and a lot of them provide like good camping potentially, or just more canyons. This part of the road too is really cool coming up. Like, you're way up high, and it's like kind of a narrow road. Absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys now. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know if you're able to make it here. This hike is really a special place. Lower Calf Creek Falls, also amazing. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.